identical for all observers of any given event. It's the objective truth, is the apparent truth. The apparent truth is always the same for every observer of any event. It's raining. It's raining. See, no story. The farmer has no story. The parade organizer has no story. It's just the apparent truth. It's raining, and that fits. It fits together because it's just the apparent truth. To live in the apparent truth, to move and have your being in what I call the observed reality, is a very high level of being. If you did nothing for the rest of your life but stay in the observed reality, you'd be very peaceful and very happy in your life. There's no question about that. So a science fiction writer named, I think it was Robert Heinlein, wrote a book in which he had a character that he called Fair Witness. And the character called Fair Witness was a guy or a woman, a person, who would be asked to come into a situation and just observe what's going on with no judgment and no story behind it. So the fair witness would wear he would put or she would put on her little white cloak. And when she wore the white cloak, she was known, everybody in the space was told to not talk to her, don't encounter her, pretend that she's not there. She's just going to look at what's going on as a fair witness. And then she's going to report, when she takes her cloak off, what she saw from a standpoint of simply what is apparently true. So in the story that he wrote, it was about people who are having an argument or a disagreement or some kind of a confrontation, and they wanted a fair witness to watch the conversation, to watch the exchange, and to see what they saw without any story behind it. You see, brilliant device that Robert Heinlein used as a literary device in that book he wrote. So to come from a place of the observed reality is a very high place of being, because we've dropped all of our stories and we're simply living in the space of what is so. That's the observed reality. Now, when we go to the actual truth, we immerse ourselves in the ultimate reality. And that's a place that the soul takes us to. But those are the three brand names of truth. And depending on the truth you buy into, see, are you buying into the imagined truth, the apparent truth, or the actual truth? Depending on the truth you buy into, you will have a thought about the event from which will emerge an emotion, from which will emerge the experience of the event that produces your reality with regard to it. And that's how the system works. Actually, it's not exactly. I mean, there's more to it than that. I know you think that that would be the end of it, but in fact, we have to ask ourselves, where does the truth come from? See, where does our truth come from? And the answer is data. The data that you hold with regard to the event that you're observing will be a deciding factor, or an important factor, probably the deciding factor, with regard to the truth that you buy into concerning the event that you're experiencing or observing. And that truth, as we've now discussed, will produce a thought, which will produce an emotion, which will produce your experience of the rain on parade day. That's the event, or whatever the event is in your life. So it's data, the data your mind holds, that produces this truth, which results in your thought. Let's look at where this data comes from and the kinds of data that informs your reality. To understand where the data comes from, I mean, it comes from the mind, but you know, what part of the mind it comes from, if I could put it that way. To understand that, we have to understand how the mind works. So let's take a minute here and talk about the mind itself as an instrument, as a tool. Your mind is 1/3 of your three-part being. You are body, mind, and soul. Yes? And the mind has a particular function in that triumvirate. It's the body's job to collect data. The body is a data collector. It collects data through the eyes, the ears, the nose, and all the other sensory perceptors, and many more than you might think of, more than just your 6 senses, or more than just your 5 senses, more than your 6th sense, but many, many senses. Even your skin, for instance, is a data collector. Do you know that? You know how sensitive your body is? Your skin is so sensitive you can literally walk into a room and come within 5 degrees of deciding what temperature it is. Or you can walk outside and say, oh, it's about 76 degrees outside. And you'll surprise yourself at how sensitive you are, how close you can come to the actual temperature outside. Or for instance, even more interestingly, have any of you ever awakened 5 minutes before you set your alarm to go off because you have an inner sense of what time it is, and you don't want the alarm to wake you up, so you wake up out of a clear blue sky, out of a dead sleep, and you reach over and you turn the alarm off. It's because you got to go to the airport. It's a 4:30 alarm, and you wake up at 4:27. We've all had those experiences. That's how sensitive your body is, that it can actually pick up how many times the Earth has revolved, how far it's gone around its revolution, and you can know intuitively what time it is without looking at a watch. So I want to tell you, your body is a very sensitive receptor of data. Now your mind's job is to take the data that it has received from the body and to, first of all, actually accept it, to receive the data, then to store the data, then to categorize the data as it's being stored, and to decide which category that data falls into. That is it similar to a prior piece of data, in which case it goes into that file, or is it a relatively new piece of data, in which case it goes into that file. So its job is to analyze the data, not just to store it, not just to categorize it, but to analyze the data. Then its job is to retrieve the data and to bring it forward, to retrieve all the data that your mind has ever held when your body confronts a new or its next physical environment, or to put it in simple terms, its next encounter with life. So here you have an encounter with life, and your mind, which is constantly working at 1,000,000 gazillion miles a minute, is encountering the present experience of your body and telling itself all about this experience based on its analysis of the prior data that it has stored. And it tells you all it thinks you need to know about this particular moment based on your prior awareness and your prior experience and your prior understanding. And your prior awareness, experience, and understanding comes from not just things you have done, but of course things that others have done that they've told you about, or that you have read about or learned about, from even things as silly as TV videos or games, video games. The data of our mind comes from 1,000 different places: our history, our culture, our understanding, and not just your own walk through life. Yeah? So you're holding this enormous amount of data about the events of life in general, so that when you encounter any particular event, the data is brought forward just that fast. That's called past data. And data comes in 2 forms. It is either factual past data, 2 + 2 = 4, or it is judged past data, based on the assessments that your mind has made with regard to how that data fits into any particular agenda, idea, thought, wish, or desire that you have held at the time that any piece of data is encountered.